your study. You see. Because here, you see, it doesn't help me very much when you say that you know, it's general. When you say that the confrontation, no. But both, and Cruz too.
Right.
See? Cruz too. Because, you see, in my opinion, neither one of these writers came with a pure objective. They lacked this objectivity, you see. And so that you could easily be pulled one way completely out of sorts with reality.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm going to be writing a review of Wright's American Hunger, which is the section of his autobiography, Black Boy, which deals with his experiences with the party. And it struck me that that section was unrealistic.
Yeah, unrealistic.
In terms of his own experience. Because it talks about Chicago.
Yeah.
Now,
I read that.
It's my impression that he had a tough time with the party people in Chicago, but it was a very different story in New York.
It was different in Chicago too. So
that he was exaggerating.
He exaggerates. He tells. You see, he tells what was the truth. I don't want to get away from that. He does tell the truth, but then he exaggerates it so much that he makes a caricature of the truth. See?
Yeah, that's the impression that I get. But because I haven't done much on the Chicago scene,
there's a big black comrade. Oh well, I know this is Hayward. See?
Right? Yeah.
But this isn't Hayward in the book.
Right.
You know, Hayward is a mile.
Right.
He would never come down with a hammer and so forth. The party did all of these things, but you see, he would do a better service if he would tell how they did it.
Right. But see, one of the
they would do it. They did it many times. You know, with kid gloves. You were struck, you were hit, and you didn't know what hit you. You know.
See, one of the things that was sort of funny is, okay, Wright says that he sort of made a decision to sort of leave the party as an organization in 1936, when he was still in Chicago. Now, when I am going through all the Daily Workers, he's right in the thick of everything.
Right.
Was he a member of the party? Or?
Sure, he was a member of the party. He worked for the Daily Worker.
Was he active in the Harlem section, or was he tied in with a different section? Was he a member of a party unit?
Well, he was with the cultural section, say, the cultural workers. Well, now there, the stories that he tells about the white liberals, you know, and this, it's true that he would run mostly with white liberals, you know, Moggs and what is his name, Howard
Lawson.
Howard Lawson, yes, and the others. Now there were 2 or 3 of them who actually understood the ideology, you see, of the party. And stood up for it, you know. But the others never stopped being liberals.
See, I also get the impression that
he would naturally be a little bit uncomfortable in that atmosphere.
He was, in other words, with the cultural workers downtown rather than uptown.
Yeah. So
he wasn't tied in with the Harlem section.
Not in the party
right.
organization.
Did you run when, you know, during those years, did you have much contact with him in Harlem?
Yeah. We used to have rap sessions all the time. You know, him, Ted Ward, and Ralph Ellison. You see, we were discussing literature, the role of literature, and mainly the idea of symbols to the writer. how these symbols operated on them. Each one with Ellison. I think I discussed this.
Not in detail, I don't think.
Well, anyway, with somebody had asked me, says I maybe should write something on this. But it didn't go beyond that. You see, we didn't discuss politics at all. When we were together, we discussed literature. We discussed, Proust and the Irish writer.
Yeats?
No.
Joyce?
Yeah, Joyce, Proust, and Dostoevsky, and that contributions in the main. Then of course how what symbols were in their minds as they were writing, and each would explain all this. My contribution was as a listener, with here and then a comment or two. How is that? So, well. Ward, Ted Ward, who was a playwright, of course.
Yeah, he wrote a play called Big White Fog.
Big White Fog. Now, he says, now that is his symbol. You see, according to him, you see, what the black man is fighting against, he's fighting against this big white fog that gets in his way at every turn, and he can't manage to break through that big white fog. Now, all of his characters and large and small relate to that. That they're confused in this fog and trying to get out of it. Well, Wright explained in quite some detail his symbol. His symbol was that of steel. The steel enclosure. That his symbol of the black man was Bigger Thomas. You see, Bigger Thomas, when he was in this prison, and here was the white lawyer. What was his name?
Max.
Max. That's it. Max was trying to talk to him or convince him as to what he should do and so forth. And he wouldn't listen to this, and he was just enraged, that this jail confining him. And so that wherever the black went in this society, he was confined by these steel cages, you see. And this was a symbol that operated on his mind as he spun these tales in his fiction writing. And with Ellison, his characters, or his symbol, you see, was the road. Here's the characters all travel the road. They were traveling around the road and their different experiences. But always, this road was fraught with dangers at every turn. They never knew what was around the corner, or where they were going to stop, and it had no end to it. We were discussing, things of that sort. Now they seem rather light. They're not frivolous, but sort of a...
Yeah, but see, but if you read Wright, you would not ever get the impression that kind of discussion could go on with a black Communist Party leader.
Yeah.
You'd get the impression that they would say, art must be the crude servant of politics.
Yeah, well, which was the line of the party. But then, you see, with me and being there, I was never, one of these straitjacketed people. And also because I had a certain aesthetic appreciations all the time. See? Well, I could understand what he was trying to do. And none of this had any bearing, didn't touch on the Communist Party, because at that time I wasn't interested in what where it touched, just whether or not the writer was pursuing the truth. That's what I was interested in.
I'm just curious, was Theodore Ward in any way related to this guy, Douglas Turner Ward?
No.
Who's with this the Negro Ensemble Company?
No, but Douglas Turner Ward worked with us too. That is, well, he was in the party, and he worked with me. I was on the Daily Worker. He worked there. What
was it that drove Ellison and Wright out of the party circles? Was it anything specific, or there's just they drifted away?
Ellison was never in.
He was never in. He was just in the movement.
He was around, you know. And with Wright, he was just a hanger-on. But we used to, I'd go to lunch with him and talk with him.
So you had in Harlem a lot of people who could sort of be around the movement without being disciplined members.
Yes, a whole lot of people. Like Reverend Licorice, for example. You see, he at one time he was sort of my protege at one time. And whenever he had an idea, he would have to discuss it with me, you know. But when he was the assistant pastor at Abyssinia, so you had a lot of people like that.
So, and Wright was sort of in that kind of relationship. He was.
But he was a party member.
But he was a party member.
Yeah.
Do you recall what it was that pushed him out?
I don't know. It was some experience, I think, that he had with the whites in the cultural movement. At least this is what he says. Because his experience as a bigger Thomas. This is what you see. This character Max, you see, was supposed to have been a composite of the characters that he had dealt with in the party. You know, the liberal who sees the poor suffering people, you know, and but never doesn't understand their motivations, their needs, their aspirations. You see, he just wants to rescue them from their suffering. That's all. Well, this character of Max must have represented the people in his experience within the.
Because it seems that he turned against the movement pretty bitterly. But as late as 1940, he was defending the Nazi-Soviet pact and politically, and at least in articles in the Daily Worker.
I remember when his Bigger Thomas was published. Well, of course, at that time, see, his Bigger Thomas was such a not an obscure character, but he was such an inscrutable character. See, this Bigger Thomas, see, no one could understand him. And Green, the novelist from North Carolina, see, discussed with Wright about Bigger Thomas, and he said, well, one thing he says I can't understand. He says I sympathize with your. He was a pretty. I don't know whether you remember the name. Green was quite a Southern writer at the time, and he says, but there was no handle. I couldn't get a handle on him. And so he says that's one weakness that I have. Well, of course, I criticized him from a different point of view. I criticized it. I bought hall space we had a big discussion in Harlem. This was a big. This really was really had its impact.
Yeah, I know Ben Davis had a long review of it.
That was an answer to my criticism, see. And of course, I couldn't get columns in the Daily because they closed out to me. They were all, anybody had to be for Richard Wright because V.J. Jerome had decreed it. And
so you mean so that criticism could only get in a very veiled way?
Yeah, in a very veiled way. So then Ben had a long. You read it.
Yeah, I read. Yeah.
So Ben had a long piece in there, going back to Dostoevsky, Raskolnikov, and other Dostoevsky characters, in order to show what Richard was up to, and his, of course, this wasn't exactly true. See, what Richard was up to. I don't say that. I do say now my appreciation of the novel has changed somewhat. But he does have the character who is inscrutable to the sense of to the end that you wonder, well, now what the hell can you do with that? See, he's a man who will not, he doesn't understand, he can only explode. See, that's all he can do. Mm-hmm. And this I think represents a basic philosophy of Richard, because when he left the Communist Party, he also left any kind of organized discipline movement. You see, then he went over with the existentialists. Mm-hmm. You see, and he wrote a novel. His novel, The
Outsider. Yeah.
Now, The Outsider, which was a rotten novel, in a sense, because it began peddling the idea, or it was peddling the idea that some can be supermen. You see, some according to certain standards. Mm-hmm. That is, you can use your disability to rise above humanity in such a way that any act that you commit, including murder or anything else, can be justified. That was I read and reviewed that too. It was let's see, the two characters was the former black postal clerk, or I guess a clerk or postal worker of some sort, mm-hmm. from Chicago, and this white a DA.
Right. Yeah.
These were
and they had these big philosophical discussions.
Great long discussions. You see. Well, so I don't know. That's what drove him out. There was some kind of some sort of within his mind. You see, there must have come a contradiction. You see, philosophically, that drove him out. I can see how that can be. Mm-hmm. You see, that happened in the field of the superstructure. You see, he was thinking. I was thinking too. See, I'm about 52. I began to think that, what the hell, you see certain things and you want to say certain things. The party says no, it has to go this way, but this doesn't relate to reality. So therefore, if you want to be a writer, and you see that 50 people were present at a certain time, when 350 should have been there, well, I feel obligated to say that 50 people were there. Mm-hmm. The party tells me, no, you see beyond that, You have socialist realism, even in your journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to wonder. I said, well, now, that being so, how here you have a character that you want to develop. Now, this character, although he may be a socialist, but he could also be a petty thief, you know, and he could beat his wife, a womanizer.
Mm-hmm.
We had some very good socialists, very good guys like Phil Frankfeld. You see, Phil Frankfeld couldn't be in a room with a woman, you see, 10 seconds before he was propositioning her. And then he was a good guy, energetic and everything else. But boy, what he would do with women, you know. And not conventional stuff. You know, just out of you'd never think of it. You'd never think of it to see it. Well, you couldn't write this, you see, about a communist character. You had to, you invented, you know, socialist realism. So it was the theory that you wrote about what should be.
Right. Yeah.
Well, now that's the thing I think that helped to solve right.
But one of the things I sort of wonder about is, it did seem like at certain points, like in the late 30s, that the party did have a cultural policy which left room for a certain amount of ambiguity. There was a lot of writing in the Daily Worker about jazz in that period, 38, 39, 40, reviews of jazz albums. And a lot of the reviews dealt with the music in its own terms. It didn't try to, you know, crudely relate the musical developments to a political line. And so I wonder, in one level, how come that can happen in the party when, you know, it would seem that in general the approach towards culture is sectarian.
Well, let's take jazz and the party's treatment of it. You see, the party viewed jazz as the peculiar contribution of blacks to American culture, and they saw that and then of course they were true, that their perception was true in many respects. They also saw that it was a folk. You see, it had a folk expression. That's why it was a communist, you see, who pursued Ledbetter, and put his songs down first of all, and a number of other of these folk singers, Josh White, you see. All these guys were singing for nickels and dimes on street corners until the party got a hold of them and brought them out. So that an understanding of this music, you see, was important. An understanding of it throughout the party, you see, was important. And just for the music itself, the music itself was political.
So they didn't try to. There wasn't. They felt that just to talk about this music and publicize it was a political act. You didn't need to argue that every aspect of this music was related to a specific aspect of political struggle.
No, because it was. You see, it was the music itself carried its own program. It was a music of protest, a music of aspirations. It had, you know, although it was small, but a guitarist would sing and sing about some boss who had taken his money, put him off the land, and or some what jailer who did such. That's all. That this was the black experience in the South, and that's all he had to sing about. So that when the party picked up on these folk singers, well, they really had a range.
Though they also did some stuff with the urban music swing,
yeah,
which was not as explicitly dealing with protest themes. Certainly, I mean.
But you see, even there, if you take the jazz, and that is not the tin pan allegory, but if you take the jazz that these jazz musicians were what do you call it? Jamming. It was jamming in those days. Well, this was a protest too. See, it was a protest against the formal music. The formal music, which was made for the person learns, the performer learns all of the formal things. Take it a concert, where a concert pianist, he learns all of the formal, he has learned all the formal exercises before he comes to that. Then he comes to performing. When he performs this, in a slight, his right to variation on this, on a Bach sonata, a Beethoven sonata, the Bach's contrapuntal forms of music, he has to play this exactly. See? And the listener must listen to it exactly. And a part of the listener's enjoyment is the fact that he knows exactly.
Right.
You see. Now the jazz musician, you see, was protesting this. See, he wanted to free music so that the soloist would be able to take a flight, when he felt it. So that's what came out of these jazz sessions, that they would take a tin pan alley tune, but when they got through with it, it wasn't a tin pan alley tune. See, the party saw this too. See, that at least it had that small protest within it, and that's it.
Right. Okay, now I have a batch of questions which don't specifically relate to Harlem, but which I'm sort of posing because a number of people who've read my stuff have asked them. And this is about how the top leadership of the party functioned in relation to the Comintern. You remember the Politburo of the party, I guess, during the late 30s. But you came on in 36?
Yeah, about that.
How were you selected as a member of the Politburo?
Well, at first I was co-opted. That is, as a party leader in Harlem, it was necessary that I be on the Politburo. Then the next time, of course, I was elected to the National Committee. I guess it was in 36. And I was made an alternate member. It may have been I'm sure it was an alternate member. I was not a full member, but I was an alternate member to the political bureau. That answers the question.
Right. Was there a Comintern representative who functioned in relation?
At all times.
And so that was a way in which the relationship between the international organization and the Central Committee and the Politburo maintained contact. Was that person, in a sense, more powerful than the party leaders, or was that a position which could be superseded?
Well, let's see. Now I remember two reps. See what we call the CI rep. One of the CI reps was Isla. The other was let's see. In other words, they called him. His name was Young. I didn't know who he was, but Young was the name that he used. Isla was pretty well respected, you see, among the party leaders, those who came in contact with him. His brother was the musician. Well, he was not obtrusive, you see. He did not intrude upon the leadership, the national leadership here. Now, I can imagine that his relationship to Browder, or to whoever was the general secretary, you see, is where this leadership was exerted.
So it wasn't so much in relation to the Central Committee as a group.
No.
He would.
Now he would take the floor, of course. He was a solid, well-educated and disciplined and intelligent man, and he could take the floor and explain certain lines that were being taken. But that's all.
He didn't. It wasn't a question of him giving orders.
No, not at all.
So he was more or less a consultant.
A consultant, you might say. But of course, imagine that you see the power that he had, the source of that power was always, the party, the Soviet party. And of course, the people who were on the Politburo knew that. And naturally, if he were to take a position, and if it was at odds with, although I don't remember a time when this was true, then you would have to figure, well, the Soviet party this one here, does it want that? So you'd have to sit up and pay attention and think about it.
Do you recall him having much to say about the Negro question in the United States? Or
I don't know. There was probably, I can only think of one time, you see, that is when we were really beginning to concentrate on the Negro question. He might have said something in support of what Browder had said. Browder had always assumed the leadership. Now, the leadership on this, among the whites, you see, would come from Browder, Hathaway, and Minor. Minor was the main man who would speak on these questions. And of course, he might, the CI rep might say, a few words in support, and that's all. But I don't remember him initiating it. Not in a full political bureau meeting. He may have.
Oh, it might have happened with him talking with Browder privately. What was Browder's power within the Politburo? Was the Politburo a genuine discussion body, or was or was Browder really the one who formulated policy and the Politburo ratified it? Or was there genuine give and take?
Well, in most cases, the Politburo followed what Browder said. He would lay it out, and there was a discussion of it. And in the course of the discussion, it may have been modified here or there, but it remained that same line. Now, with the black leaders, you see, now, as a rule, we would caucus first before going in. See, there was Haywood, Ford, and myself. And well, there were two others. There was Josh Lawrence and
Manning Johnson.
No, he was never. No, he was an unstable character. Always was. He just had a lot of talent, but he was unstable.
Patterson.
No, Patterson, I think then was out of the country. But anyway, these four or five, you see, we would caucus, get together, discuss just what we were going to do, and how we would phrase our proposals, and then what we would fall back to, and so forth. And a lot of this was done with the Negro Congress. See, that
was a proposal that originated among
the blacks. See?
Yeah. And there wasn't any hostility on the part of the black leaders caucusing towards
they didn't
that.
know this.
Oh.
No, they didn't. No,
because you had once mentioned that in Harlem, for the membership, black membership to get together.
They could.
But the black leaders could get together.
The black leaders, well, 3 or 4 people could have lunch.
Right.
We'd go over to James and Ford's house, and we would go to somebody else's house for lunch. And
was there a lot of political maneuvering going on in the Politburo in terms of divisions, or was it a fairly?
Yeah, you had that going on all the time too. You see, well, I don't guess any organization. You can't have a rubber stamp, complete rubber stamp. You have a rubber stamp more or less, but then when you get down to the nitty gritty, you see, you have a trade union caucus. Now the trade unions would caucus. Then you had the black caucus against the trade unions, because the trade unions would always resist, you see, mostly they would resist the black proposals. Now the idea was how to surround them and get the proposals.
So a lot of the anti-discrimination stuff which the trade unions accepted, they accepted sort of grudgingly.
Yeah, because well, this was true. Well, how am I going to carry this out? It wasn't that they were opposed.
They were worried that their base.
Yeah, but I go before the membership with this thing. How can I go to the district committee on this? A city central. How will I be able to carry that out there?
Was it hard to persuade Quill to do anti-discrimination stuff in the transit workers? To with the seniority clauses, when the transit workers union eventually made the agreement with the coordinating committee, did he have to be pushed from that level?
Well, it took a lot of persuading.
Because when I was going through the Harlem papers, they were pretty critical of the transit workers in the late 30s for not pushing for the promotion of blacks from the porter position to motorman.
Yeah, this is true throughout. In all of the trade unions, you had that resistance. You see.
So it required a lot of maneuvering.
Yeah, but at the time, you see, Quill was so dependent, you see, upon the party apparatus, you see, for a number of things. For the technicians in the trade union movement. After all, these fellows had little or nothing, so each one more or less had a commissar, you see, as to what was to be done here and there. Before they get to now, I look at these guys, they're all, every one of them, I know them, all personally. Being dependent on the on the communists, who, as I said, they were crackerjack administrators.
Mm-hmm.
And many of them were well trained. I mean, well trained even from a bourgeois point of view. You know, many had been in insurance and other things.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew exactly how to administer these all of the things which the union would have to do now for itself.
Right. Yeah.
And therefore, Quill had no alternative. He had to depend on the party, and the party could make certain demands.
Mm-hmm. So they weren't so necessarily enthusiastic about taking on a strong anti-discrimination policy.
There was one or two of them.
Maybe the Furrier guys.
No, well, no. There was one or two of the transport workers union. I can't think. One of them who worked very closely with me.
Austin Hogan, Harry Sacker.
Oh, Harry Sacker was the attorney.
He was the attorney.
So
What about
Quill fired?
Yeah, right. Austin Hogan was the whatever his name was, John Santo.
Now Santo, he was our guy too.
Right.
See, and there was another one. There was a German. German in there. I can't think of his name. Oh, well, my wife used to work for him too. Well, anyway,
Mm-hmm.
You did get that resistance, and but in every union you had one or two guys who stood out. You see, who would fight, and the fighters, and they fought for it genuinely.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, one of the things.
Faber
Mm-hmm.
Faber
was the guy, right?
The German.
Mm-hmm. What you're telling me sort of contradicts a little bit what Richard Moore was telling me. He felt that like some of the black leaders didn't fight enough for a black interest within the organization, but that was going on all the time. From what you're saying, that there was a sort of, among the black leadership.
Well, maybe we didn't naturally. We didn't break out of a certain limits. We put certain limits on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't, all right, we put it up there. If you don't take it, well, we go back and come back again with it, from another angle. No, it really wasn't that the blacks weren't fighting, that they didn't fight. Naturally, you couldn't publicize it. See?
Right. Uh-huh. Did Ford's relationship with Browder help your group when they presented proposals? I sensed that Ford and Browder were very tight. Well, was that not? That's at least what's his name, Trani, seemed to suggest when he wrote his book.
Well, yes and no, you see, because well, they were friends.
Mm-hmm.
But Browder had to maintain a very close contact. See, this was during the period of industrial concentration.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now his main friend was on the political bureau. The guy that he paid more attention to and all was Roy. Oh, Lord, I can't think of his name.
Howard?
No, Roy. I know he was a young Middle Western guy, see.
Mm-hmm. Hudson?
Roy Hudson. That was the guy. Roy Hudson. He was right with Browder all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I missed that name, Roy Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
He was our trade union director, or whatever
right.
you call it on the political bureau. Well, see, the trade union director had a much bigger hand than the Negro director had.
Mm-hmm.
So now next to that, of course, would come Ford. But That's
But
fine.
trade union work had the precedent.
Trade union work had the precedence all the time.
Right. Yeah, that brings up an interesting related matter, because when I was going through the papers, after the state commission on the conditions of the urban colored population gave its report, the party was involved in sponsoring some legislative proposals, anti-discrimination bills, and there was one bill which was directed against discrimination by labor unions, which the party didn't support. And was that and that caused some controversy.
Yes, that was a controversy that was caused by involving Richard Moore, say. And a number of other of the black members who didn't support that. Well, in fact, out of the party and among ourselves, except those that had to because of the